Presenting Benny Goodman and his music.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me on a Friday instead of the usual day. Evening, Chris. Hey, Luann. Hey, Kathleen. Hey, Mona. Hey, Timothy. Hey, Wendy. Hey, Eric. Hey, Karen. Evening, everybody. Welcome along. Hey, Nancy. Hey, Sheena.
And first of all, one of Irving Berlin's greatest hits, Blue Skies.
Hey, Cindy over on YouTube. Hey, Jean on Twitch. Gwen on YouTube. Hey, Diane and Donna. Hey, Betsy and Kathy. Hey, everybody. Hey, Tracy. Hey, Chuck. Hey, Kathleen, Joanne, Gary, Betty. I thought I was in a Game Boy. Is the audio... I'm using a new microphone today. Is the audio kind of a mess? Let me maybe turn it down a little. I got this cool new mic that is set up for the new podcast. Really cool. It can change. It changes color based on what kind of microphone pattern you're using on it. Getting a pretty good sound. All right. Yeah, this new podcast, I'm putting some weight behind it. Hey, Wendy. Yeah, when I move it, it's not going to be as good. Just makes sense. Hey, Chantal. Hey, Todd. Hey, Kathy. The podcast will be wherever podcasts are sold, or streamed. They might be on the Patreon a day early or something. Hey, right back at you, Octavio. Doreen, we're going to start one pretty soon. It hasn't been formally announced yet other than unofficially at Mystericon, but yeah, this winter I'll be doing a new podcast. Doreen will have to wait and see. Also, it's not finalized yet. I don't know the basic concept of it. We're kind of experimenting with formats. All right, okay. Yeah, it'll be a new podcast where really I've just got too much material that I'm sitting on. Too much stuff from the New York books, especially. Did I ever go from Resurrection Cemetery? I don't think I ever saw a deer at Resurrection, but I'm not there very often. Todd, the $3 tier will get most of the updates, but a couple I'll hold out for the $5 tier. Yeah, once again, next week would be a pretty good week to be on the Patreon. Hey, Natalie. Hey, Steve. Hey, Don. A couple of people who have come to the zoo have already gotten previews of it. Miles. Here's the man himself. The man of the hour, clothed in immense power.
Benny Goodman presents Helen Ward singing With All My Heart.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, I might redo a couple of the people from Cemetery Mixtape that have come up again. This is George Frederick Cook, Charles McKnight's wife turns out to be more interesting than I realized, too. Yeah, I hope so. I'm really hoping I can find someone else to handle all of the tech aspects of getting it posted places. It's just such a pain to me. Bonjour, Susie. Yeah, we had a good crowd at Graceland last week. This weekend we're competing with Open House Chicago. CAC. Yeah, my intention is to have it in all of the usual podcast places. Amazon, Podbean, Spotify, Apple Music. Oh yeah, I'm dressed in my Haunted Mansion wallpaper blazer. It might not last the whole tour, it's pretty warm. And this is Chicago in fall, when it's not really that cold in here, but the radiators start working anyway. I would write a song. Oh, here comes Miles up here. Working today with the new microphone that has been set up for the podcast, and which Miles is about to get all over the place, all over. Hey, Kathleen. Hey, Maureen. Well, okay, we won't tell you you're here. Hey, Vicky. Hey, Larry. Welcome along, everybody. This place is very cool. It's polyester, though, so it is awfully warm. Hey, Donna in Texas. Hey, Chris.
Goes way back and gets a lot of rhythm out of Walk, Jenny Walk. Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Hey, Bridget. Glad you made it. Susan, I'm 2 episodes into House of Usher. After that Storm episode of Hill House, I feel like I'll at least give anything he puts out a try. So far, I'm not drawn into it as much as Hill House, but this is about corporate goons. I'm a little more drawn into stories about skeptical ghost hunters. So, that may just be me. I like to see myself in media. Welcome, everybody. I'm 2 episodes in. I'm kind of bad at watching television these days. I keep getting distracted by other stuff I got to be doing. Turning my volume down just a tiny bit here is getting to the red a lot. Yeah, happy wedding, Katie. Hello, Susan. Hey, Donna.
And they all loved it. They all loved those passages when they played by Benny Goodman.
Hey, Eleanor.
In the same vein.
We are going to let Benny Goodman do one more tune here, then we will get started properly. Happy Tell Your Radio listeners about Triskaidekaphobia Day. Hey, Kelly in Montana. Hey, Bridget. All right, we had a lot of new donations today, but I'm not seeing a lot of panicked messages, so that's good. Hey, Kristen, all right. Evening, Vicky. Just in time. Doing tours in the rain on Wednesday was not great for my voice, honestly. Also in a week when I saw 4 concerts that required some yelling. Vicky, a lot of people have, I've gotten more interested on the Friday thing that makes me kind of wonder if we should try doing Friday instead of Thursday. Gotta make sense. Even for October, I'm not doing that many tours this year. Oh, Cindy, that's cool. Oh, hey, Cindy. Evening, Rob. Mysteries at the Museum, that was a while ago. Now, today I talked about my old book, Your Neighborhood Gives Me the Creeps, on Zoom with a prison book club. It was one of the best book group talks I've ever done. We're letting Benny Goodman finish up this tune, then we will get started properly. Well, Rita, I'd have to get off whiskey and a cookie pretty early, but we rarely go like the whole 3 hours things anymore. Yeah, Eric, it's similar to like Hill House when it's really kind of a modern reimagining with as many references as they can possibly cram in. Hey, Mom. Hey, Maureen. I may have to work quickly. I've got to fly to D.C. to go lobby votes for Speaker. First act will be to sponsor a bill called Shut the F Up About Chicago. This will be one more pill sponsor than Jim Jordan has ever had considered. Hey, Karen. Hey, Dad. All right. All right, we're going to let Benny go on pause there and move on. So, all right, welcome along, everybody. I see that this number precedes me over here. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. I have been a tour guide and historian here in Chicago for going on 20 years now. I've got about a dozen Chicago history books out, including Ghosts of Chicago, H.H. Holmes, The True History of the White City Devil, Mysterious Chicago, the book, Murder Maps USA, and the new Graceland Cemetery, Chicago Stories, Symbols, and Secrets. That is tomorrow's walking tour at Graceland Cemetery, tomorrow at 11:30. Not to mention, I did a whole book called Just Kill Me, which is all about a novel about a ghost tour guide who makes places more haunted by killing people at them. It was only sort of autobiographical. Yeah, the jacket, Ronnie got me this. This is a blazer made from wallpaper from the Haunted Mansion. Kind of appropriate for this and very little else. It's also very warm being made out of polyester. Oh. Adam and Mysterious. Yeah, it comes up like Adam Seltzer Books and Tours or something, but that is in fact me. Books and tours, that's what I'm talking about right now after all. That Holmes book even got me written into a conspiracy theory at one point. They thought I'm a plant by the government, apparently. I should really be getting a better check than that, but government work, I guess, you know. So, all right. But my first gig in tourism was doing ghost tours here in Chicago about almost 20 years ago now. That was really where I got my start, both as a tour guide and as a historian. We were... we were being taught all of these stories that we were supposed to tell that didn't really seem like they were on the level to me. And I figured we could at least get the historical parts right. And I realized that the way people have been telling these stories, in many cases, was not entirely accurate. So I ended up finding all of these other stories in the process, branched out from there. But I do love to go back and do ghost tours. In fact, 2 weeks from tomorrow, we'll be doing a couple of ghost tours on a bus for the first time outside of Mystericon. The first time I've done them publicly in many years. So you go to adamchicago.com. That'll log you into all of that stuff. So We're going to be doing a virtual tour tonight. That means we're going to be going to places that we normally could not go to. And in fact, tonight we are going to be focusing on places that I don't really get to go on the bus tours, either ever because they're too far away or just anymore. So, all right, everybody. First of all, here's a word from our driver tonight, Lindsay Curry.
Welcome to the Spirits Bus. I'm excited to be your driver for the night. I'd like to remind everyone to keep your arms, legs, and most importantly, your heads inside the bus at all times, or you may not get them back. In addition, the first person to sing the wheels on the bus this evening will be promptly dropped off in the lake.
All right, Lindsay Curry, author of a book called Scritch Scratch, which is totally based on me. One thing I really need to tell her about. Well, one thing that we will probably do on the tour, but I can't quite do what we're showing here, is out in Lincoln Park is the tomb of Ira Couch. This one I've been kind of teasing you guys on, because here's one thing I won't be able to do anymore, is tomb snooping. This is where I take a iPhone taped to a wire hanger and slide it under the crack in the door to see who is inside of Ira Couch's tomb, which is the last surviving mausoleum from the old city cemetery where Lincoln Park is today. And here you can see on the inside, it's a little wobbly. There's another door on the other side, so I can't see all the way in. And spoiler alert, I still can't see all the way in, but let me just say, it would be a good week to be on the Patreon. Just letting you know. But anyway, let's all go to the body dump. So out here near Damon, Elston, and Fullerton, back when I was last doing bus tours regularly, there was this empty field. It's just a field. There's a little garage nearby. You can see that over on the right-hand side. But I first found this back when I was working for a whole other company about more than 15 years ago now. And the boss sent me an email saying, hey, somebody just sent me this newspaper article saying they found another H.H. Holmes castle. H.H. Holmes, of course, had the building called the Murder Castle that had just recently caught fire, ending the investigation into it in 1895. But apparently, up at number 65 Sobieski Street, or where 65 Sobieski ought to be, as it said, there was another building. It was a 150-foot-long building containing a gas-burning oven that spanned the entire length of the place. He is not known to have actually done any glass bending here, so if in fact this was an H.H. Holmes building, there's kind of a short list of things that a known serial killer might have been doing with a 150-foot-long furnace. So we started taking people here. It took me a lot of work to figure out at the time where 65 Sobieski Street ought to be, where that would go to today, but I learned some tricks in the process. I learned a bit of my trade, a little bit of my craft. The way that Alan Pinkerton learned about detective work by working on the Underground Railroad. Well, a little less noble than that, perhaps. But it ended up being this little dead-end street that happened to be right on the tour route, which was awfully convenient. Now, there was this thing, you see this tallest building you see over here in the background. That one had this light attached to it at the time that not every night, but many nights, would turn itself off or on every time I said H.H. Holmes' name. Or occasionally Emily Van Tassel, a supposed victim of his who lived just a few blocks away from here, over about where the Pritzker School is now across from Wicker Park. I think it's the Pritzker School. I don't remember exactly which school that is anymore. It's been a minute. So, we started taking people here really just as a historical curiosity, but a few people pointed out early on that light was going off or on, like clockwork, every time I said that name. And they told me, I kept waiting for you to bring it up that it was doing that. I thought you were going to make a whole big show like going, look, the light. They assume that I must have some kind of a remote control rigged up or something, like I'm that organized. So we started going people here just as a historical curiosity, but weird things did start happening here. We can't really verify whether Holmes was here or not. We can verify it about as well as anywhere else that he's been. But there's also other things as well. There's stories about about bodies being dumped in this place well into the 1970s or so. And we did start getting some strange pictures out here. Like this thing of a figure behind the tree. I was standing over off to the side of this, so this isn't me. I don't know what that thing behind the tree is. Then we've got this one next to in between the woman and the serial killer van is this strange thing. And that same person got this picture that same night. You looked right next to the person in the red hat. It's kind of a blurry photo, but not so blurry that something like that ought to be showing up necessarily. And yeah, of course, there was the tree. The tree was always oozing some kind of reddish-brownish gunk. This is probably related to the fact that this used to be a junkyard. Probably rust and iron oxide got into the soil, that got into the tree. But when you go to the H.H. Holmes body dump and see a black branch with blood that keeps dripping, it's still pretty spooky. It adds to the atmosphere in any case. This is also, I've been telling this story on the zoo tours, and I told it today on the prison book talk, that there was one night we were out here in the weird Chicago bus and spinning it around, trying to get turned around, but the windows had fogged up. It was snowing that night, and we hit something. And I thought that we hit somebody's car. The driver said it was just a tree, but then somebody in the back of the bus said they were pretty sure there was a woman back there. So I ran, hoping that we had just hit somebody's car. But utterly ready to testify against the driver if it came to that. This guy was a jerk. He was one of those guys who says, well, it's okay if I use racial slurs because I hate everyone equally. Major reason why I no longer work for that company. But got out to the back, hoping we had just hit somebody's car at this point. But there was nothing anywhere near us. No fire hydrant, which was my second guess. No tree, no truck, nothing. There was a good 10 feet between us and anything. And no footprints in the fresh snow. Which I always say really terrified me for a second, and then I figured, well, if we're going to hit somebody with the bus, I really, really hope that it was somebody who was already dead 120 some odd years ago. But all right, let's move on a little bit here. Haven't heard from our old friend Pullman yet tonight. But this is the Florence Hotel down in the neighborhood of Pullman. Always on the verge of reopening. And in the background there, you can actually see a little bit of Johann Hawk's house. But really what we're talking about today is Mr. Pullman himself in 1894 was requiring his employees to rent houses from him in this neighborhood. But then he cut their salaries, but not their rent. This led to some massive strikes, as well it should have. And that led to the President Cleveland sending in the troops. These got to be really violent strikes. And this all kind of came to a head down here at 49th and Loomis. Which, when I went to film here, happened to have some terrific Halloween decorations up. Sticking with a theme of spider webs and skulls and body parts. And then just a nice retro jack-o'-lantern over here. So I like it when your theme is not, I went to Home Depot. But right over here, you've got this overpass, these railroad tracks that at the time in 1894 during the fighting probably would have been grade level down alongside the street. But this is what it looks like at night. So the legend is that right around here at 49th and Loomis, there is a ghostly headless horseman, the ghost of a person who was decapitated during the Pullman strikes. Now, there was a person who was decapitated during those strikes. It wasn't because of this. It was like a powder magazine blew up. It was just an accidental decapitation, not something that happened within the fighting here. And, but then again, fog of war. You never really know what's true and what's not and what isn't getting reported. And look at this place, too. If I were, in fact, a headless horseman, this is exactly where I would be riding. And here's a shot from around where this took place at the time. And you can see here the tracks look like they're about on the level of the ground, as they would have been at the time. Now they've been raised up. Over the course of the late 1890s, early 20th century, they worked on raising these up so that people would stop getting crushed by trains as they crossed the street. But this is all a bit of the... Let's hop up here. We'll go right up to the railroad tracks. The first couple of episodes of House of Usher remind me a lot of what they said about Pullman's kids. Reminders of the worthless wives of rich men's sons. But yeah, this is the old Grand Trunk Railroad, no longer in use, as you can see. When was the last time you heard of anybody buying a ticket on the Grand Trunk Railroad? But the tracks are still there, still raised up, and honestly, if I were a headless horseman, this is exactly where I would ride. And sometimes that's just how stories survive. Sometimes the actual stories of the Pullman strike can get buried under, too much politics to even bring up without starting a fight, but the ghost stories can kind of keep it going. There's another one that I've been mentioning on the zoo tours lately. This is Bethania Cemetery on the south side. We'll just put this here briefly. There's a ghostly old woman who is said to show up alongside the gates here. People walk up and say, "Oh, did you get locked in?" And then she'll cuss them out and disappear. Phantom foul mouths are, of course, my very favorite kind of ghost. Yes, that is correct. It was the Grand Trunk Railroad, which paved the way for the Grand Funk Railroad, which paved the way for Jefferson Airplane, which paved the way for Jefferson Starship, which paved the way for the Alan Parsons Project, which, as we all know, was some sort of hovercraft. Let's head up to Diversey, named after Mr. Diversey of the Lil Diversey Brewery. Kristen, me too, that is exactly the kind of ghost I plan on being myself. It is important, after all, to have goals. With a hip hip and a hippity hop. He's out looking for a top to chop. Yeah, you can see right about there where the stabilizer gave out. But this building was the old Adolf Lutgert sausage factory, back when Adolf Lutgert was the sausage king of Chicago, manufacturer of all kinds of German, Italian, and French sausages. And this is one of the things that turned out to be untrue when I started researching these stories, is as of 2004, most of the books that came out about that came out about Chicago ghost lore and Chicago murders said it was kind of hard to figure out where exactly the factory was today, but of course it was long gone. No, it's still there. They've expanded it a bit, but it's still there. But Adolf Lutgert may have already killed a guy before. He had an altercation with a guy who was smoking too much outside of his place. And when the guy was found dead, he was found dead with large wads of tobacco shoved down his throat. It kind of seems as though Lutgert told him a couple of times to knock it off. And when he wouldn't stop spitting chewing tobacco, he just shoved that chewing tobacco right down his throat and choked him to death on it. But he was married by the time he was up here to a woman by the name of Louisa. And Louisa disappeared from the place one day. And a couple of weeks later, neighbors realized they hadn't seen her around, so they went to Adolf and said, "Adolf, where's Louisa?" And he said, "Oh, there's nothing to worry about. She's gone to visit friends in Kenosha. She'll be back soon." More time passed and people realized, okay, nobody goes to Kenosha for this long. This was before the Cheese Castle, obviously. So they started some inquiries, and it turned out that Louisa was gone, and also the day that she had first left, even though the factory was closed down for cleaning and repairs, some smoke was seen coming out of the chimneys. Now, this is a difficult story to tell because you mentioned sausage and murder in the same sentence. People really expect it to end with somebody getting eaten. Major reason I don't tell this story more, honestly. But while the cops were investigating, Adolf himself one day walked into the police station, banged his fist on the desk, and said, "You have hired ghosts." And they said, "What?" He said, "You have hired ghosts. I know you have." Apparently, he had been seeing the ghost of his wife walking around the place and accused the police of hiring somebody to dress up like her ghost, walk around the factory, and try to scare him into confessing. Which, frankly, is exactly the kind of shenanigans the Chicago police of the late 1890s would have pulled. The 1890s, 1900s, that's exactly the kind of stuff they were into. Like, this is before Shippey was the chief. That's especially his kind of trick. But eventually they found a ring with Louisa's initials and some bone fragments that early forensics were able to establish really were human bones. Lutgert was sent to prison, and Officer Blowell, our old pal Officer Blowell, was also the source of the Sombrero Man ghost that I bring up on the Lincoln Park Zoo tours, said that one day he and a couple other people were chased all through the basement of this place by the ghost of Louisa. One guy ended up putting his head right through a window. A lot of Officer Blau's ghost stories tend to sound like Three Stooges episodes. But now, I know that there will be a series this spring on WTTW about Chicago Mysteries that is going to cover this. They even brought in some actual ghost hunters, a couple of guys that I've worked with before. I think they were kind of ignoring the fact that there was a server room right where they were using their equipment. But these things happen. Let's cover... Oh, I got it. I don't have enough... I didn't go back far enough on this. Oh, no. So this, I didn't really have a good shot of this. I really need to get one now. But this is Old Town Tattoo. As of 2006, it was called Odin Tattoo, and before that, it had been the Clement Funeral Home. This is still what the building looks like today. There's the chapel on the right, and then more of the offices and showroom over on the left. So, sometime before 2006, the Clement family had moved out, and was already telling ghost stories about it. That had been a popular family topic for years about this place being haunted. But when the tattoo people moved in, they found a gravestone up in the room, up in the attic. It was very heavy. It took a few guys to haul it down into the fireplace, but they kind of wanted it where they could keep an eye on it. What it was doing there, the place was a funeral home. Maybe there was a typo on it. There was, maybe the date was wrong. Maybe it got rejected by the family. Maybe it just never got paid for. But the owner of the place at the time was this guy called Tapeworm. And I will fully admit, when they first brought me in to investigate this place and said, we're going to investigate a tattoo parlor, I'm like, yeah, what are they on? And the answer was probably plenty. And the first guy I talked to was like, yeah, man, there was a ghost in the basement going like, woo. It's like, okay, you've been watching not only too much Scooby-Doo, but too much of the Freedom Rock 4LP set commercial. Because dude talked exactly like that guy. But Tapeworm, the owner, Richie Herrera, had much better stories. It wasn't just the kind of thing where I know he's telling me what he thinks I want to hear. Like he talked about a guy in a brown suit who would watch him while he was tattooing. He talked about a guy in a powder blue suit who would show up every now and then. Probably some poor sap who died in the 1970s. So then he pointed to the staircase that led up to his apartment. He took us around the apartment, too. Took us into the bathroom, said now and then the window would open itself. It's like, man, the ghosts are thinking it smells that bad, huh? Showed us a room where he'd just been recording with stuff with members of the band Filter. Then he pointed to the staircase when we were back down, and I cleaned up his language quite a lot here. But he said, now this is what freaks me out, is you see that staircase? Twice I've been walking down them stairs and I felt like somebody was trying to push me. And that freaks me out because everybody knows you can't fight back with these cats. So, first time it happened, I just looked up, I went, listen! If I die in this place, it is on! I recently found my audio recordings of that night, but I haven't found the part where Tapeworm says that. I don't know if I was recording at the time. This was the days of mini discs. I only had like 70 minutes to record. But, so he threatened the ghost to a fight in the event of his death. And 3 weeks later, he did die in the place. He had a heart attack not too far from the staircase. And since then, we just started saying, man, if they're like having immortal combat there now, my money is on Tapeworm. And after that, we didn't really start hearing too much about the ghosts from the funeral home anymore. We heard about the ghosts of Tapeworm. Like one of the guys who worked there on Halloween a few months later had a missed call on his cell phone from Tapeworm's old phone number. There were stories that equipment would mess up if they played techno music, because Tapeworm hated techno. If they played metal, equipment worked a lot better. Only his friends could get the tattoo equipment to work at his station. The show Ghost Lab came in and did some audio recordings and determined that they got a voice that sounded like Tapeworm cussing them out. I did hear it once. It did sound like that. It did sound like him to me. But alright, so about just a couple of years ago, this has been a while now, I had a dream that I ran into Tapeworm at a football field someplace. He's like, oh yeah, I remember you. I met you like right before the whole thing happened. I'm haunting a place in Texas now. So, I don't know if he's still there or what. But I told people for a while, if there's ever been a ghost that I believed in 100%, it's the ghost of Tapeworm. But alright, let's move on a little bit. Down to a place where I have promised the owners I will not say the exact address of this place. But down around like the back of the yards neighborhood is this house that back in the early 20th century was owned by a guy by the name of John Unterlander. So one of the houses down this stretch is Chicago's only officially haunted house. At one point, John Unterlander, the owner of the place, was a psychic medium by trade. Psychic medium, ran kind of a miniature little cult that I think was mostly to get laid, as these things tend to be. But he actually went before the zoning board or whatever commission does this sort of stuff and got his tax assessments lowered on the grounds that the house was too haunted to rent out. Now, according to him, a few years before, a girl had accidentally killed her little brother in the place, and the neighbors all said that it was haunted. And he said, listen, there are no ghosts here. I'm a spirit medium, and I know these things. Ghosts have too much dignity to just go hanging around houses like this. But because everybody believes that it's haunted, I can't rent it out for what I want it to. So, lo and behold, the board actually agreed and lowered his assessments a bit. So, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's really haunted, but for all intents and legal purposes, this house was haunted. I've talked to the current owner there. He didn't like me. He didn't want me. He was kind of suspicious of my motives here. He said, nope, never seen anything, never heard anything like that. I've owned this place for X number of years. He seemed a little bit threatened by me asking questions, which makes sense, so I didn't press him too much. But one thing I don't get to do on the zoo tour anymore is take people down into the women's bathroom at the Lion House. Used to do this, but too many people would try to sneak behind and stay overnight in the bathroom. You know. But this is the women's bathroom in the Lion House at the Lincoln Park Zoo. Now, I run the haunted history tours there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays in October. That's still going on. And one thing I get most consistently, I always try to get as many stories from the staff as I can. The thing that I get most consistently is about the women's bathroom in the Lion House. Now, even the mirrors there, they've redone the place since then. I don't think they're using these old warped mirrors that look like Bloody Mary would show up without you even having to say her name on the inside of it. But it's a kind of a spooky place. The Lion House has been there for a really long time. They've rebuilt it all now. We've been seeing the lions pretty regularly on the tours. There was, just the other night, one of the lions came up and tried to lick a lioness's butt, and she kind of growled and chased him away, and the sheer number of jokes I could have made that I didn't. We will kind of save that for a couple of weeks from now, when we'll get to do the after hours tours. I always do at the end of Halloween season. But there was a police officer here one night. Probably the best story is they were closing up after a special event. They'd brought in an off-duty cop to do additional security. And since he didn't know that the cleaning staff will only go into this place in pairs, and usually not after dark at all if they can help it, the security guard said, okay, we've got to check the bathrooms and make sure nobody's lingering behind. I'll do the men's room. You do the women's. So this officer walked all the way up and down this place. All the way up and down, checked in every stall, made sure there was nobody there. Got back to this one, I believe it's the one on the left here, and decided that while he was around so many toilets, he ought to make use of the facilities. While he was so engaged, he heard a woman's voice behind him saying, "You can't be here." He turned around just enough to see that there was a woman back there. They quickly turned back around saying, oh, sorry, but you can't be here either. We're actually closed right now. Then when he finished, he turned around and there was nobody there. So he was back on the radio immediately I need you at this place right now. So who this might be the ghost of is anybody's guess, really. We were right near Suicide Bridge, a place over the lagoon that had about a jumper a week between about 1892 and 1918. That's a lot of people. But also, back in the 1880s, they built the first public bathroom in Lincoln Park. And one of the articles about it mentioned that the guy who was the attendant in the men's room was going to be paid $55 a month. The woman who ran the women's room would get $50 a month. That is ahead of the gender gap, but I'd haunt the place if I were her. Let us move along. Here's Calvary Cemetery. Now, haunted bathrooms are, in fact, very common in this city. Really, any city with a lot of hauntings. This is Calvary Cemetery going out to Lakeshore Drive in the lake. This little section of road is said to be haunted by a ghost named Seaweed Charlie. It is said to be the ghost of a test pilot who crashed into Lake Michigan. There was a guy who crashed into Lake Michigan while doing training maneuvers and was able to get out onto the wing of the plane, then eventually drowned. A whole crowd watched it all happen, and several people also drowned in the process of trying to salvage the plane. His name was not Charlie, but we hardly have a better explanation. I don't think we have the names of the people who died trying to find him. But people would say that now and then, it kind of reached its height 20 or 30 years ago. Longer than that now. This is me thinking 1990 is 10 years ago again. But they would say that as they're driving along North Sheridan here at the edge of Lakeshore Drive and going up into Evanston, this is kind of the continuation of Lakeshore in a way. They would see a guy climbing up out of the water covered in seaweed and walk across the way into Calvary Cemetery. Now, the test pilot, for one thing, was not buried here. It was also not named Charlie. But when you see a guy crossing the street covered in seaweed, it's not like he actually uses his name. You have to just kind of... It's like same with Resurrection Mary. There's not a credible sighting where that ghost says what her name is. We call her Resurrection Mary because it's got a nice ring to it. It's not going to be like Seaweed Ruttiger. Beware of Seaweed Ruttiger. There's another one. I'm not sure I've ever actually found anybody who has a claim on having seen this ghost, which could also tie it in to Dillinger's Alley. This is the Biograph Theater being redone for the movie, what was it called? Public Enemy. Kind of a forgettable Johnny Depp film, honestly, but there was a day when they redid this entire block to look more like it was 1934. Now, the Biograph still has its sign up, but now they've added Manhattan Melodrama with Clark Gable to the marquee here. This is a movie, it opens with Mickey Rooney as a kid whose parents die, so he's left an orphan, then he's taken in by, they die in a thing that's basically the Eastland disaster. And incidentally, Western Electric, the company that had chartered the Eastland the day of the Eastland disaster, did the sound for Manhattan Melodrama. So we get a shot of Mickey Rooney crying that he's an orphan now. Then an old guy takes him in. The old guy gets trampled by a horse in a labor uprising, not unlike the Pullman strikes, just out of date. And so we get another shot of Mickey Rooney crying that he's an orphan now. One would have to have a heart of stone to watch this movie and not laugh. But in 1934, John Dillinger saw his last movie here. That was Manhattan Melodrama. The Feds, run by Melvin G. Purvis, a really tough guy, but you wouldn't know it by his name. His name, like Melvin Purvis, I just want to give that guy a wedgie at once. He was standing outside waiting on Dillinger. Anna Sage, Dillinger's madam, came out in an orange dress. This is the alley over where they chased him and shot him. They later said that it was a shootout. It was a straight-up assassination. Now, this one, I would stand here and ask people if they notice anything strange about this painting with the guitar. Eventually somebody would figure out that he has 6 fingers on one hand, so I'd be like, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." Also, a great alley to educate people about the Target Rats signs. But this is how it looked when they were redoing it to look like 1934, which is really cool. John Dillinger was chased down this alley. He was a bank robber back in the days, just about a year after the term getaway car was coined. Rumor had it that he was robbing from the rich to give to the poor. He was most certainly not. Moving a little bit closer here. This is really cool to just get wandering around. I wish that it happened in a day when I had better digital cameras and better video capability so I could get more shots of this place. Because it was really cool. The movie itself was not nearly as much fun as just walking around the recreated alleys and streetscape. But Dillinger was shot right here in the alley. He was laid out on a slab. This is his arm underneath the sheet, but it led to a legend. Well, I would always say this was just a legend. That is his arm under the sheet, that he is not lying there and awfully happy to be there on the slab. I mean, look, if he ever got excited, he would die of blood loss to the brain. Then I would turn to the driver, Willie, and be like, "I don't know, Willie, is that a problem?" And he'd be like, No, you get a little dizzy, that's about it. One of the other tour guides of that company would literally do puppetry of the penis tricks on the tour. That was what got us in trouble, was my joke with Willie about Dillinger's ding-a-ling. But there's Dillinger as he looked face up. But this has long been rumored to be a haunted alley ever since. This goes back to at least the 1970s. People have been talking about it. They say that they see like a blue glowing figure of Dillinger running about halfway down the alley, then dropping to its knees and disappearing. That's what they say, but I have yet to find a first-hand account of this one. Not for lack of looking, but this is one of those famously haunted places where it's very difficult to find a first-hand account. Similar to like the Lutgert Sausage Factory, there's only the one first-hand account that I know of, and that was Officer Blau, which is not the most reliable source in the world. Dillinger, I don't even have something like that, honestly. Even though we're surrounded by places where people go to get drunk. They used to show Rocky Horror at the Biograph, and people would come out to this alley for smokes. It's really kind of amazing that there aren't more stories about this place being haunted. Also, the Water Tower. The Water Tower is said to be haunted in a lot of old Chicago ghost books. They say that there was a guy who hanged himself in there during the Great Chicago Fire, and on just the right nights you can see his silhouette swinging back and forth inside of the windows. Now, I've never been able to see anything inside of the window, so it's kind of difficult. Not to mention, there was a guy who jumped off of the thing in 1875, but stories about a guy hanging himself inside of the place have never been verified. What I do know is this isn't the tower where they stored all of the water or anything. This was the pumping station. There was a pump underneath the ground that would pump water out from the lake tunnel that went a mile out into the lake, which looked like this. See, in the early 1860s, they determined, every couple of years, lots of people get cholera and die. Maybe that's because of this nasty, nasty drinking water. But if you go about a mile out into the lake, the water is crystal clear no matter what we dump into the water. So let's dig ourselves a mile-long tunnel underneath the lake. And that's what they did. The water was being pumped from about a mile out. But in 1864, while it was under construction, two of the construction workers got into a fight, and one of them killed the other. So there was a period when we were using the water from this intake. We were literally having water pass through a murder site on its way to being drunk up in Chicago. James, good question. You read his articles from the 70s, it's very different from how he was regarded in the early 2000s. I'll just say this about that. But I figure we can't really go too far without talking about the old Englewood Post Office, which isn't generally on the bus tour routes. You guys got the special one the other night. But this was the site of a building that we now call the Murder Castle. Now, this is the place where H.H. Holmes was supposedly operating a hotel during the World's Fair and rigged it up with everything you could possibly need to kill a person. Now, as we've seen, I've covered this in whole other things. In fact, next week I think we'll do Drunk H.H. Holmes. But this is a little more fiction than fact, but he is known to have killed 9 or 10 people. 9 that I know of, and 10 where I think he did it, but I just can't prove it. But this is about the closest we have to a good contemporary image of it. There are a couple of photos from 1895, but this is up at the top there, you see this weird stuff. There was a temporary roof that they had to build after the building caught fire in 1893. So we don't really have a picture of what it looked like in its heyday. But it stood right about here on 63rd Street. You can line up in the Sanborn fire insurance maps. The blue is where the castle building would have been. It's not really that big of a building. And then the green is the post office, the current site. Well, you can see there's a tiny bit of overlap there. Let me just scroll down. I put some of this out of order. But here we are inside of the place. This is the back behind the counters in the Englewood Post Office. And right over there is this door, which I now have to rotate. It's been a while since I did this, you can see. There. Door that's down to the basement that says, "This is not an exit." Behind the door is a staircase that looks like this. And then down at the bottom of the staircase. Now this I did not film with the intention of really showing it to people. You can kind of tell this here. This is really just, I was down here with the History Channel and just kind of trying to document the place. Because a lot of people were wondering what was going on in this basement. There is this point where you walk right up to a point where there's a little step ladder going into a hole in the wall. And when you go into this hole in the wall, you go into a tunnel. You walk down this past these bricks that look older than most of the bricks in the place. It continues way outside of the footprint. And as you turn down this hallway, this is where it overlaps. This is the part that overlaps with the basement of the H.H. Holmes murder castle. This little place. Now, this particular trip down there, I had just thrown out my back lifting up a giant thing of kitty litter. Sorry. So I didn't get past the pipes at the time. The next a couple of times I was there, I did, and went all over the place. Got much better footage of the rest of it, and was able to see like the whole other side and the whole space underneath the post office, which at the time was, you could really get the idea of how the cops were doing this. When the cops investigated in 1895, the space underneath the post office now looks a lot like the basement did at the time based on the drawings. And you could imagine, like, walk around, you'd see like an old mop wringer and think, this could have been a murder weapon. Everything you see, you start thinking, this could have killed somebody. But it was while I was sitting here, and I'll play this for you guys. While I was down here, I had this audio recorder running and started whispering the names of the people I think were most likely to be killed there. And I'll play this back, see if you can hear this better than I can. But there's me whispering the names, and then there's a sound like a little girl singing. I know there's a lot of new people out there tonight, so I want you guys to hear this too. For lack of a better idea, I started whispering the names. I had an audio recorder running. So here we go. Spooky. What I always tell people is it sounds to me like she is saying sorry beefalo. But other people have heard where did she go, or why did she go, or stabbed me in the throat, which would not have been Holmes' style. But where did she go, presumably, one of the people that we can most confidently say were killed here. There's only a few people that I think were even likely to have been killed in this building. There was Emmeline Segrand, and more to the point, there was Julia Connor and her daughter Pearl Connor. Julia was a woman that Holmes had dated for a while between 1889 and 1891. Pearl, her daughter, was 6 at the time she disappeared, along with her mother at Christmas of 1891. So I'll play this one more time, see if you guys hear it again. There's another little noise afterwards, but that one's not me. So, yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys hear. To me, it still sounds like Sorry Beefalo, the worst Chef Boyardee product of all time. Straw to Go is a good one. I love the person who told me it sounded like she was saying, Barry Manilow. And one guy absolutely insisted that it was Stab Me in the Throat if you play it backwards and slow it down or something. And eventually, if you mess around with it enough, you're going to get it to say something. But stabbing people in the throat was not H.H. Holmes' style. As Inspector Fitzpatrick said, he was a scientific killer. He would never think to killing people through violence. But, all right, that gets us about over the time limit that we've got for tonight. See if I can find where the closing thing is. So, next week, we are going to be doing Drunk H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes is one of my specialties. I've done stories about him and virtual tours and walking tours and bus tours about him many times. But on Thursday night, we're going to see how well I can do it drunk. A few months ago, you guys seemed to really enjoy when I did the ghost tour while drunk. So we'll try it with H.H. Holmes as well. I will get that up pretty soon. And we really should have a Sorry Beefalo t-shirt coming up as well. So those are some of the upcoming things. Also, this needs to be updated, but it's the same dates. Saturday, Graceland, Sunday, Rose Hill. October dates are all up on adamchicago.com or mysteriouschicago.com. And with that, everybody, I will put the Betty Goodman back on, and we will just hang out for a bit like we always do. Move this down just like that. Just like that. Plenty of friends, all the Philly steaks you can eat. All right. Move it down here. So, all right, everybody. Here's Benny Goodman. Thanks for joining me. How'd the new microphone do? Did you notice any audio difference tonight? Thank you, Heather, Grace, Eleanor. I could just put it right here because it looks really cool. I'm going to take off the jacket now because it's pretty hot. Thanks, Eleanor. I can keep these colorful lights on, yeah. Hey, Gina. Lauren just made meatloaf for the first time. All right. Oh, thanks people who are kicking it over on Venmo. All right. Yeah, it's a good mic. It's getting a good sound. It was affordably priced. And it changes color based on what kind of mic pattern you got on it. If I'm muted, it goes red. I won't leave it like that. Well, that's nice. Knowing that it's muted is probably wise for me. Hey, Angela. Sorry you'll be missing me. Thank you, Christine. But those are some places we can't go on the bus tour, which is coming up in 2 weeks. Tickets for that on adamchicago.com. Karen, I assure you it's not vintage, but it is groovy. You know, I'm seeing a lot of people say that they like the Friday night ones. Maybe I should move to Friday for a bit and see how that goes. Hey, Arlen. We also did have pretty good numbers tonight. We had over 200 people. That's pretty good. In this day and age, we will have other things to do than virtual tours. Or based on ticket sales, walking tours this year. But, you know, sometimes it's like that. I don't have a new project to promote this year. Yeah, Angela, I used to have a lot more people. Even now, people all the time coming like, we watched you all the time during COVID. I'm still here, you know. I realize people have other stuff to do now. I have a lot more competition these days. My favorite is still the woman who said, oh, your voice reminds me of COVID. Gee, thanks, lady. Where are the kitties tonight? Well, Miles has been hanging around. Miles is presently over on the couch there. Thanks, Pat. Pat, awesome. This weekend's tours look to be pretty light, for October tours especially. Tom, well, thanks. Yeah, it's better if you come in person. Carol, the New York City book is overwhelming, but I've got it narrowed down. It's now just going to be Trinity and St. Paul's churchyards. Then the rest we'll do in a volume 2. There just turned out to be too much. That's part of why we're going to be doing a podcast this winter. Because I only get to show, like, a paragraph of the Plagioscarilliad, the pamphlet-length poem that was used to challenge Elias or Oswald to a duel. And it's too good to not to share. So we'll expand the Patreon a little bit. And again, once again, if you like the couch term, this is a really good week to be on the Patreon. It's about to be. So we'll expand. We'll do a couple of the cemetery mixtape stories, perhaps. But the podcast is going to be all stories of people that I've had to research well beyond Google for. Stuff that we have to go into the microfilm rooms, hack my way through university library websites, old ladies' diaries, archives. Next month I get to go in the Trinity Church archives. Hey, Joanne, take it. November and December, I haven't decided yet. I don't know if we'll be doing too many walking tours that time. I will be in New York for a few days going to the archives, so maybe I'll get to show you guys something really cool. Now, the New York one is way harder than the Graceland book was. It's harder to find data about a lot of these guys, and then you have to deal with the fact that so many of them owned human beings. Are we going to do Greektown? We'll go through Greektown a little bit, Angela, on the boat tour. How bad is the dust in the archives? Depends on the archive. Trinity's is housed in a pretty new building, but usually they actually keep the material in off-site storage. But I've got lots of folders requested. You see stuff like vault condition reports from the 1860s, when I guess they went and checked what all the vaults were like, what coffin plates they found inside of them, stuff that I can't believe isn't already out there and available. Because it sounds so cool. Hey, Laura! Yeah, this has been posted a bit. I've been trying to talk about it. Eileen, yeah, Captain Kidd's got some connections. Lord Bellamont, his last sponsor who eventually betrayed him, is underneath St. Paul's someplace. Migler, coffin plate. The metal plates that they would put the person's name on top of a coffin. Which often when they opened up the vaults after 10 or 20 years was all that was left. Laura, that's awesome. Yeah, Trinity and St. Paul's are right next to each other, run by the same place. I mean, both archives, really. And some of there is about St. Paul's is just full of, like, pirates and gamblers, actors, poets.
Goodman presents On the Alamo.
Hey, Georgina. Hi, everybody. We're just in the post-show hangout if you're just joining us now. I usually try to go about 45 minutes. Yeah, Chris, I know about those catacombs. That'll be a volume 2 kind of book. There are some very interesting people there. One really interesting guy was enslaved there, in fact. There were so many enslaved people in New York in those days, but it's very hard to find good data about them. Often the best you can find is, often the best you can find is like stuff from ads from when they tried to escape. People placed ads for their missing runaways. Often with some of the people I'm looking up, the only thing you can find out about them is that they used to place ads for runaway slaves. So does the Trinity Church have catacombs? Not exactly. There's vaults, but they're not really accessible other than one or two of them. You have to dig out to get into each individual one. They don't do it much anymore. Marita, I am having a hot toddy tonight. This was whiskey, lemon, honey, and hot water. And it did a body good, let me tell you. Alright, good night, Bob. Oh, Gary just sent me the deer picture. I see it now. That's cool. That's really cool. I hope everybody who donated for this one got in, had no trouble with it. We had a lot of new people donating to this tour tonight. I keep feeling like it's Thursday. Everybody else feel like it's Thursday? We usually do this on Thursday. I keep thinking, yeah, if I stay up a bit. Susie, you may be thinking of St. Patrick's. St. John's is a burying ground that is now a park. Thank you, Angela.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and we say right in
What is
here,
your Halloween costume? I have not gotten that far yet.
And some more to
Haven't been Zombie Flanders in a while, though.
Lord sing. Eeny, meeny,
Yeah, I keep
miny,
thinking
mo.
if I stay up a couple more hours, I can get the new release playlist on Spotify. Susie, that's a wonderful choice. Yeah, Cindy, it's not that hard to donate, but it used to be, back in the old days especially, people would donate on Eventbrite, then I'd get these, like, really angry emails saying, why can't I access this? Like, I don't know. It's broadcasting just fine. The instructions are all the same. Yeah, people seem to like it on Fridays. I don't know. What should we do? Catch your troubles by the toe. If it hollers, let it go. Let it fly away. Now, the Patreon is where you get your biggest bang for buck, for sure. The ticket tier, officially you get 1 ticket a month. More realistically, it's kind of a season pass. Yes, nice to have all the new people here. Pridge, I don't know if I can do Thursday and Friday. It's rough. Johann Hawk's 18th wife. Let me check in which one that was. Hang on. Hawk wife master list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Oh, 18 was Carolyn Stryker, who married Hawk under his real name, John Jacob Schmidt, in Philadelphia. He deserted her 2 weeks later. And she was the one used to establish that his marriage to Amelia Fisher was bigamous, which meant that Amelia could be made to testify. And she really did a nice little dance when she found out he'd been hanged. Like, if her first name is not also Maria, I would be kind of surprised. Did the audio just go weird there? Maybe it goes red when I go too loud. Sorry, we're still trying to figure out the nuances of the new microphone that went red for just a second there. Not sure if I have a picture of Carolyn. How about Dead Pullman? How about Dead Pullman? Well, in New Yorkers there's been much more of a learning curve on these than I thought. I have to learn way more about, like, specific battles of the War of 1812, how apprenticeships worked versus indentured servitudes, etc. So many things. Plus more about, like, the debate about the vaults, the debate about extending Albany Street, more about Dutch occupation, etc., and various uprisings, etc. Uprisings and supposed uprisings. About time I switched to some pumpkin whiskey over here. I feel like I gotta drink this before Halloween. Yep, some pumpkin whiskey. The Dutch occupation, the transition over to the British. All of this stuff comes up in these books. A lot more about piracy, too. Old-timey theater people.
And here's a short encore portion of Benny Goodman's forthright invitation at the beginning
That
of the program.
whiskey toddy, though, is hitting me a little harder than I expected. I'm feeling this booze. And I like it. Benny is wrapping up, though. So, quick plug once again. 2 weeks from tomorrow are the Haunted History bus tours. Mysteria Chicago's own original old-fashioned ghost tour on board a bus. 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Sign up now. Tomorrow, Graceland Cemetery. Sunday, Rose Hill Cemetery. Sunday, the Super Bowl of cemetery tours. If I do say so myself.
Presenting the music of Benny Goodman and his orchestra from the Joseph Urban Road.
Beverly Miles is back over on the couch. He made an appearance before the tour.
This is the National
He's right on the couch right now, though, but he kind of blends in with it. Hey, Lori. NBC. All right, everybody. So thank you for joining me today for this kind of preview of what a bus tour with me is like, in a way. But places that we won't overlap with too much, other than once again, we will never be able to tomb snoop at the couch tomb like this again. They've redone the door a little bit. And now I don't believe the crack under the door is still there. I should probably try it out on Tuesday when I'm nearby for the haunted history tour of the zoo anyway. But we may not be able to tomb snoop again, but at the same time we don't. I'm telling you guys too much. Just good week to be on the Patreon, that's all I can say. So alright, thanks everybody for joining me. I'm Adam for Mysterious Chicago Tours, telling everybody to stay safe and stay strong, and of course, if you can, stay spooky, everybody. Have a great night.